This week, we will look at managing our ESL classrooms. What needs to be managed? Who needs to manage it? How do we do that? How do we facilitate it? Now, I'm going to take myself over to the side, and I'm going to disappear for a minute. And before we go any further, I would like you to get some paper and a pen, because I'm going to ask you to pause the video several times and do a very quick 1-minute think and write. And here's your first one. Do a very quick 1 minute, write down what needs to be managed in an adult ESL class. And when you're ready, resume the video. Ready to continue? All right, let's go to the next one. Lots of things need to be managed in the classroom. So maybe your list looks a lot like this, a little like this, but it can include so many things. The books and materials we give students. Are we teaching single or multi-level classes? Because that changes how we approach our students. Teacher language and behavior. The time we give students to work on tasks. Their own involvement in interactions with you and with each other. Making sure everyone in the class has a voice. Making sure that students have good, focused, and deliberate use of their native language, but not too much. Making sure that there is equity and access to all of the lesson materials. And very rarely, sometimes it can be learner behavior. So here's your second think and write. Again, pause the video for 1 minute and answer this question: what can disrupt an adult ESL class? Okay, ready to continue? Let's go to the next slide. And maybe your list looks a little like this, a lot like this, but lots of things can disrupt our classroom. New students starting late in the term when other students have already had a couple of weeks of instruction. Maybe the students have spotty attendance because of their work or family responsibilities. They could be bored. Maybe they're using their cell phones too much and you need to control that. Maybe they're using their native language too much and they're using it as a crutch now instead of really practicing their English. Maybe the material is either too difficult or too simple for them. Maybe a student has very poor command of the academic, also called the consultative language registers. You're going to see a video from me this week about the language registers, and it happens a lot with English language students, especially young ones, that they don't have command of that academic language register, and you need to be able to develop that in your class. It could be a mismatch of learner goals and expectations. That happens. And also, it does happen. We're all human after all. It could be a mismatch of the teacher and student personalities. All right, here's another think and write. I would like you for 1 minute to make a list of adult barriers to attendance. Now, specifically, think about the factors. What factors can keep students from coming to your class? And then I want you to mark which ones can you control and which ones can you not control. And when you're ready, resume the video. Okay, ready to continue? Next slide. Our classroom management is what really is in our control. And these critical factors affect our classroom management: the enrollment policies of the program, the demographics and culture of the students in our classes, their own needs and goals, our curriculum and where the program might be located. There could be physical barriers to learning, like poor eyesight. There could be somebody in a wheelchair. And everyone knowing and understanding the classroom rules. These are some critical factors to your classroom management. There are many factors that keep students from our classes that we cannot control. And all of these things on the outside we have no control over. Their childcare needs, their health issues, family responsibilities, job duties, transportation needs, lack of family support for the student coming to school, military duty. This can really happen if you end up teaching in Asia. And assessment policies. All of those are things that we have no control over. But the classroom management in that center, that's what you can control. There are lots of demands on the teacher that you can't control, such as, are you teaching single or multi-level instruction? Is it a bilingual or a monolingual classroom? Are students allowed to use their native language? And hopefully they are. Is it a lab setting where you have just one-on-one work with the students or maybe a very small group? Or is it a larger classroom setting? Are you paid for your planning time? And are you paid for things like to make copies? And what resources are available to you besides a copy machine? Are there computers for you, for the students? What resources are there? And those are things we don't control. The space constrictions we don't control. If you teach in a public library, for example, you will be using probably a very small space with very limited resources. Maybe there's no projector or screen and you have to just use a whiteboard. And usually you can't post student work on the walls. So space constrictions, they are out of your control. The enrollment policies are also out of your control, but be aware of how your program puts students in class. Some programs, like FRCC, have closed enrollment. Enrollment closes on a specific date. The classes begin on a specific date. You cannot enroll in the class generally after the class has begun. Managed enrollment is very typical in adult ed, where the program has an enrollment event, and then the program will stay open for just a few weeks after that enrollment while new students can continue to enter. And generally, about a month after enrollment, that enrollment event, enrollment closes and they have to wait till the next term. And then there's open enrollment where students can come and go as they please. So here's your circle of influence, your classroom environment. This establishing the classroom behavior, and the students can help you come up with that. Knowing the material being prepared, meeting the needs of your learners, planning to all modalities in the classroom with differentiated instruction, knowing who your community partners are to help with those things that are outside of your zone of influence, like transportation and healthcare. You can control the amount of learner involvement by how you engage the students, how you pair them, the kinds of activities you get them, and teach to the lowest ability in the class. I cannot stress that enough, because it is far easier for you to ramp up the difficulty of an activity when a student finishes really quickly than it is for you to suddenly have to simplify it because that activity is too difficult for a student. So plan for the lowest performing student in your class and be prepared with other more complex tasks for your fast finishers to do. Be really prepared. Have that clearly written lesson plan with well-stated objectives. Deliberately select your materials and handouts. Establish a respectful and welcoming classroom environment. Meet the learner's needs and help them see their progress. And learn everyone's names and how to pronounce them, okay? You'd be surprised. That is actually something that I have to remind teachers to do. You want to adjust your instruction materials to the learner. You are not designing your lesson for equality. You are designing your lesson for equity. On the left, that's equality. I can give everybody the same materials. That doesn't make it accessible to them. So learn how to scaffold, learn how to simplify and engineer the text so that the lower performing students can perform the same task and learn the same language along with the other students in the class who are getting it a little more quickly. Lots of comprehensible input. Use a checklist of steps that students should check off when they're performing a complex task to help them begin to monitor their own progress. Use graphic organizers and chunk your material. That means break larger tasks into smaller tasks. Chunk it. Break it up over a few days if you have to, one bite at a time. You want to maximize the involvement of your diversity of students with diverse grouping strategies. Sometimes you want it to be random, sometimes you want it to be very deliberate, so you are going to group students in a certain way, and you will select the student who will kind of be the leader of that group and monitor it. And then you can also just sometimes let learners select who they want to practice with, but mix it up. Make the English accessible to all students. Control your teacher talk, slow it down, simplify your language, use silent time for students to process what you just said. Use pictures and realia, which are real-life objects, and other comprehensible input. Teach students how to use a dictionary skill, both print and digital dictionaries. You would be surprised what you can find in a dictionary. Have you ever read the introduction and the appendices of a dictionary? Find a dual language dictionary and see what it tells you about the language you are trying to learn. Teach clarification strategies, letting students feel comfortable, letting them know it's okay to say, I don't understand, teacher. Please repeat. Please, I don't understand. Allow translanguaging. This is focused and deliberate use of the student's first language where they can gain comprehension of the material before you teach it to them in English. This is not the same as code switching, which would be kind of like Spanglish, where you go back and forth between two languages. But this is using the first language very deliberately, making the students realize that they're not dummies who don't know English. These are multilingual learners. They already know a language, and now they're learning another one. So celebrate that. Focused and purposeful. Those are the key words. Persistence versus retention. These terms, stop out or drop out. You're going to read a very short part of a bigger document on student persistence. But here's the difference between the dropout and a stopout. Dropout is a term used in K-12. This is when a student stops coming to school altogether. But in adult education, most adult learners intend to come back. So we use the term stopout for them. They intend to come back when circumstances allow them to. So keep this in mind. When we're talking about persistence and retention, students persist. Programs retain. Retention is just how many people came to your class today. That's on your attendance sheet. That is recorded to your funding agencies. Students persist. Programs retain. The 6 drivers of persistence you're going to read about are these 6. Sense of belonging in community, clarity of purpose, agency, competence, relevance, and stability. Now, if you want, pause the video to read these quick definitions, but this is what you're going to read in the Nash and Kallenbach study. Think about which of these you have agency over. Which ones can you influence? I think you'd be surprised. All right, here's your last think and write. I would like you to finish this sentence. A noisy ESL classroom is, pause for 1 minute, and then continue the video when you're done. Okay, got your word? A noisy ESL classroom is, here are my ideas. Noisy ESL classroom is dynamic, energized, active, engaged in learning. So don't be afraid to have to close your door because the students are so engaged in what you've given them that teachers are complaining about how loud it is. Let them do it. All right, got to get myself out of the picture here. There we go. All right, develop your cultural humility. Share your culture with your students. Learn from them. Learn with them. And oh, please, let them laugh at you. Make errors, even deliberately sometimes, so that they catch it. They feel great, and it really helps bridge that gap between you and your students. Here's some resources for this week. The Nash and Kallenbach, it's a big, big study, but I'm only giving you a few pages of it. So let me come back into the picture and say, I hope you enjoyed this week. Managing our ESL classrooms. We're going to have a discussion, not online. Not in my courses. It's going to be in Padlet. I'm going to ask you to share a pairing or a grouping strategy. Something you've seen, something you've used. All right. Have fun this week. Bye-bye.